નમસ્કાર મિત્રો, આજે સીધું ને સટમાં આપણી સાથે કોમોડોર ઉત્પલ વોરા જોડાયા છે. ઉત્પલ વોરા માત્ર ગુજરાતનું જ નહીં પણ આખા દેશનું ગૌરવ છે. એ ભારતીય નૌકાદળના ઉચ્ચ અધિકારી તરીકે નિવૃત્ત થયા અને જીઓ પોલિટિક્સની બાબતમાં એ ખૂબ અભ્યાસી છે અને અમે ઘણી વખત ટીવી ચેનલો ઉપર સાથે પેનલમાં ચર્ચા માટે જોડાતા રહ્યા છીએ, એટલે એમના જ્ઞાનનો લાભ અમને મળતો રહ્યો છે. અને આજે આપણા દર્શકોને આ દુનિયામાં જે અત્યારે ટ્રમ્પ થકી જે આખો ખેલ ચાલી રહ્યો છે અથવા તો બીજા જે ટકરાવ ચાલી રહ્યા છે એ બધા ટકરાવ વિશે, આખી દુનિયામાં જે પ્રકારના કોન્ફ્લિક્ટ્સ ચાલી રહ્યા છે એના વિશે કોમોડોર ઉત્પલ વોરાજી આપણી સાથે વાત કરવાના છે. હું કોમોડોર આપનું સ્વાગત કરું છું સીધું ને સટમાં, અને આપને અનુરોધ છે કે આપ આ વિશ્વની વર્તમાન પરિસ્થિતિના સંદર્ભમાં, ખાસ કરીને એક બાજુ ટ્રમ્પ, બીજી બાજુ પુતિન, ત્રીજી બાજુ શી જિનપિંગ, પેલી બાજુ ઈરાન અને આ બધા જે કોન્ફ્લિક્ટ ચાલી રહ્યા છે, ઇઝરાયલ, આ બધા કોન્ફ્લિક્ટ ચાલી રહ્યા છે અને એમાં ખાસ કરીને નૌકાદળને લગતા પણ મહત્વના કામો અથવા તો ટકરાવની અંદર નૌકાદળની ભૂમિકા પણ બહુ મહત્વની રહેવાની છે. એવા સંજોગોમાં આપની પાસેથી અમે અપેક્ષા કરીએ છીએ કે આપ આ વ્યાપક ભૂમિકા ઉપર આપનું શું મંતવ્ય છે, આપનું શું એનાલિસિસ છે, એના વિશે આપ જણાવો. આપનું ફરીને એકવાર સ્વાગત છે કોમોડોર.
થેન્ક યુ સો મચ ડોક્ટર સાહેબ, થેન્ક યુ, થેન્ક્સ મને બોલાવવા માટે આપના શો પર. અને જે રીતે આપનો શો એનો આખા વર્લ્ડની અંદર પ્રચલિત થઈ રહ્યો છે, આટલો બધો ફેમસ થઈ રહ્યો છે અને લોકોને આવકાર આપી રહ્યા છે, એ રીતે ઇટ્સ ઇન્ડીડ એ પ્રિવિલેજ કે તમે મને આપના શો પર આ બોલાવ્યો, અને થેન્ક યુ સો મચ ફોર ધેટ. હવે આપે જે સવાલ પૂછ્યો છે કે દુનિયાની અંદર આ જે કંઈ થઈ રહ્યું છે એના દરમિયાનની અંદર જે આ મેઇન ભૂમિકાઓ છે, અને એની અંદર નોટ કે ખાલી વ્યક્તિ એ તો ડેફિનેટલી ઇટ મેટર્સ, પણ એની સાથે સાથે દેશ અને એની લીડરશિપ, કે જે વ્યક્તિઓ લીડર તરીકે બેઠેલી છે, દેટ ઓલ્સો મેટર્સ મોસ્ટ. અને જીઓ પોલિટિક્સ અત્યારે વર્લ્ડનું ઇટ ઇઝ એટ એ ફ્લક્સ. માટે કોઈ પણ જીઓ પોલિટિકલ એનાલિસ્ટ, ફોરેન પોલિસી એનાલિસ્ટ, એના જે કેલ્ક્યુલસ છે અને એના જે ડાયનેમિક્સ છે, દેટ ઇઝ ટોટલી ગોન હેવાય. Therefore, એમાં certain amount of speculatory feature will definitely come. કારણ કે આપણે જે મિલિટરી પોટેન્શિયલ છે દેટ આપણે જરૂરથી પાછળથી ડિસ્કસ કરીશું. પણ અત્યારે કેમ આ જાતની સિચ્યુએશન ઊભી થઈ અને એની અંદરથી એની પાછળના મહત્વના ફેક્ટર્સ કે મહત્વના ડાયનેમિક્સ શું હોય, એ જો આપણે એનાલાઇઝ નહીં કરીએ તો પ્રોબેબલી વી વિલ મિસ આઉટ ઓન ધી ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ કોર્સીસ ઓફ એક્શન that are open to these such world leaders અને independent countries like India. માટે એ જાતનો એનાલિસિસ કે જેને I would not call it a SWOT analysis, but I would call it a broader geopolitical brush. એને કરવો એ ખૂબ જરૂરી છે. અને માટે લેટ અસ સ્ટાર્ટ. તમે જે વાત કરી કે પુતિન, ટ્રમ્પ, ઇઝરાયલ અને વેસ્ટ એશિયા, મિડલ ઇસ્ટ અને સાથે સાથે એન્ટાયર યુરોપ, નેટો ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશન, યુનાઇટેડ નેશન્સ ઇઝ એન્ડલેસ. અને આ બધા આ જીઓપોલિટિકલ ફેક્ટર્સની અંદર આઈધર એ ભૂમિકા ભજવી રહ્યા છે અને તેમ છતાં નથી ભજવી રહ્યા. માટે લેટ અસ વેરી સિસ્ટમેટિકલી લેટ્સ હેવ એ લુક એટ ઇટ. 2007માં ડોક્ટર સાહેબ, જો તમને યાદ હોય તો ઇન અ મ્યુનિક કોન્ફરન્સ, Putin had said to the United States and NATO ambassadors, if you think that by advancing your eastern front right up to the Ukraine, Russia will not react in a particular way, then you are living in a la la land. It will not happen. અને માટે રશિયા વિલ ડેફિનેટલી રિએક્ટ ટુ ઇટ એન્ડ મેક શ્યોર કે આ બધી જાતના જે મૂવ્સ તમે વિચારી રહ્યા છો એ કોઈ દિવસ ફ્રક્ટિફાઈ નહીં થઈ શકે. એવરી અમેરિકન ડિપ્લોમેટ, એવરી અમેરિકન સેનેટર એન્ડ એવરી કોંગ્રેસમેન એ વખતે એવું વિચારતા હતા કે પુટિન ઇઝ જસ્ટ અનધર વન લીડર, એ રશિયન લીડર who drinks vodka in the evening and will go up to sleep, અને આ બધી મોટી મોટી વાતો છે ને આમાંથી કઈ ઇમર્જ થવાનું નથી. ઇટ ડીડ નોટ વર્ક આઉટ ધેટ વે. આજે 3 વર્ષ થયા અને 3 વર્ષ પછી રશિયા હેઝ શોન ઇટ્સ રિયલ કલર, પુટિન હેઝ શોન ઇટ્સ રિયલ કલર, અને પુટિન એના જે 1999 ના જે સોવિયત યુનિયન બ્રેકઅપ થયું એની અંદર જે સોવિયત યુનિયનનું હ્યુમિલિએશન થયું એ કોઈ દિવસ ભૂલ્યા નહોતા, અને હી ઇઝ પેઇંગ બેક ઓન ધ સેમ કોઇન. Now save this particular word humiliation in the back of your mind, કારણ કે આપણે આને હવે અત્યારના સંજોગોની અંદર એને ફરીથી કન્સિડર આ વર્ડ કરવાનો છે. Now let us come to China. China, everybody thought that it is knocking on the door, and financially, economically, it is already emerging as a second world's the strongest power. And when Russia, China, they decided to join hands, અને એમાં એનું જ્યારે નામ આપ્યું કે નેવર એન્ડિંગ ફ્રેન્ડશિપ, અને માટે Russia needed China, and China needed Russia, both technologically, technically, and economically, and from the oil and crude point of view. માટે they both interdependency continue to grow militarily, economically, politically, socio-politically, and geopolitically. Now people forgot to take the note of this particular leadership, and they thought they can probably divide this the friendship or the relationship between the two leaders and the two countries. It did not happen. And માટે the entire to a large extent the Ukraine equation એ થોડા હેવાઈ ગયા. Now let's come, it comes to NATO. 1945 માં જ્યારે નાટો ફોર્મ થયું ત્યારે એના જે કોઈ કેલ્ક્યુલસ હતા એ માટે જે રીતે નાટો વોઝ ડેસ્પરેટ ટુ ગેટ ધ યુએસ ડિફેન્સ અમ્બ્રેલા, અને વિધાઉટ એ વખતે આઇઝનહોવર અને રૂઝવેલ્ટ ને એના જે જાતના ઇક્વેશન્સ ફોર્મ થયેલા હતા એ જ ઇક્વેશન્સ આજે અગેન ઇટ હેઝ કમ ટુ પ્લે. જો યુએસ stops giving the defense umbrella to NATO, Russia and Putin will, probably, have the US nation as a breakfast on the breakfast table. Mate, they know it. And the NATO countries, they do not have that kind of economic power, neither the military power, nor the geopolitical power. They did not, they beef up their, GDP, and out of the GDP, the defense of the GDP or the defense budget, and with the result, they thought that every time, anything will happen, will be at the mercy of USA. Now, when Mr. Trump came to power in his second term, he, let go, that there are 2-3, the major cats, in the pigeon. And therefore, all these pigeons, they didn't know how to run up, haywire. And માટે શું થયું? NATO said that, look, if you do not give us the support, and if we have to give support to, Ukraine against Russia, then Russia made only one scene, long-range missiles, any kind of technological, support to Ukraine, everything is fine. The day you put boots on the, Ukraine soil, I will go nuclear. આજના દિવસે 3 વર્ષ પૂરા થયા છે, કોઈની હિંમત નથી કે they can taste Putin and Putin's resolve. Now in this kind of situation, what to do? America is not giving NATO any kind of the support militarily at this point of time. In fact, he has walked out of WTO, he has walked out of NAFTA, he has not got any good relations with Canada, he is not having good relations entirely with the European countries. He wants to take charge of the European countries in a positive manner. With the European countries, they know that they have to get subverted to the US demands. But at the same time, એમનું પોતાનું humiliation ના થાય એ માટે certain amount of two-way mechanism they are interested to work it out, so that it does not look that it's a losing game, that probably they have won it over the USA. And Trump is determined to humiliate NATO. Now Trump is also ready to humiliate Russia. Trump is ready to
Exactly.
humiliate China. And why did he, how did he do that? First he took charge of, he realized that the golden bar that has to be, picked up in this entire, geopolitics is oil. And through the oil, he wanted to take charge of the BRICS countries. So in one go, he's achieved three aims by going into Venezuela and threatening the Latin American countries. And also what were these three trump cards of Mr. Trump? One is that by Venezuela is sitting on a $17 trillion worth of oil reserve, world's largest oil reserve. And who was taking this Venezuelan oil the most? It was China. Apart from the Russian oil that China was taking, the second part was the kind of the $100 billion worth of investment that China had done in Russia, in Venezuela. So there is one theory that goes on. It's very apparent that the Venezuelans, they sold their own president by handing over president to the U.S. Special Forces, and the way things moved on the ground on that particular night, it was very apparent that the kind of word that is going around, it was a sellout by the Venezuelans themselves, is coming out true. Because except the fact that Mr. Maduro is in the custody of USA, not a single kind of a movement is taking place in the Venezuela. Venezuelan vice president has taken over as president. The opposition leader is keeping quiet. The oil, the kind of a scenario, nobody is giving a talk or giving a word on it. So how do you, do the analysis out of it? The fact that people say that the Venezuelan president was sold by the own Venezuelan people and the security forces is true. And one major general has already been apprehended as a main culprit or a main perpetrator of this, the entire kind of a trade-off that took place between CIA and the Venezuelan armed forces. How far is true? Only future will say. We'll have to wait and watch. Now see the scenario. The BRICS countries, they were knocking on the door, ને જેને આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં કહેવાય ઢોલ નગારા વાગી રહ્યા હતા દરેક કેપિટલની અંદર, BRICS country ના દરેક કેપિટલમાં, that dollar is gone, dollar is in ICU, de-dollarization will take place. People have started trading in yuan. The alternate BRICS currency will come into the play. America said only one thing, or the Trump said only one thing, that the day the dollar comes under threat, we will go to any extent and every extent, and we will ensure that such countries are taken to task. Now, apart from the five founder countries of the BRICS, that is the Brazil, Russia, India, and the South Africa and China, out of that, which were the major powers or the donor powers that has the capacity to build, or rather give the donor aid to the BRICS currency and challenge the dollar in the world market, or create an or the alternate, the fiscal greed or the fiscal architecture to challenge the dollar. It was basically Russia and China. India has got no capacity, financial capacity, to be a donor country in BRICS. A marginal, probably contribution can be made. So is South Africa, and therefore, the other the Latin American countries and the global South, they all were ready to jump on the BRICS wagon and challenge the supremacy of the dollar and thereby the hegemony of the United States in the world. United States would have never allowed that to happen. Monroe or no Monroe, or Dunroe or no Dunroe.
હા સર, ડોલર એક મુખ્ય મુદ્દો બની ગયો, કારણ કે સામે બ્રિક્સ કરન્સી જો આવે તો ડોલર એમાં છે ને ધંધો ન કરે તો ડોલર છે ને નબળો પડે. એટલે ટ્રમ્પ એને માટે પણ છે ને મને લાગે છે કે ગાંગા થયા હોય એવું લાગે, આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં કહીએ તો.
No doubt, 100%, because it was not a stated aim. બધા અત્યારે ઓઇલ કરે છે વેનેઝુએલા, ચાઇનાનું ઓઇલ બંધ કરી દીધું ને રશિયાને પણ એની પાછળ the whole the hidden agenda, hidden game was to ensure that American hegemony, American supremacy in geopolitics and in the dollar supremacy continues unabated, unchallenged, and nobody has even the courage to even think about the word de-dollarization. કે આર્ટિફિશિયલ the architecture એને ક્રિએટ કરી શકે like SWIFT. અને એ જો પોસિબલ ના થાય તો US reigns supreme. And at the same time, he'll be sitting on the, virtually, the largest oil reserve of the world. So, and he, the next, within 48 hours, he captures in the international waters 2 Russian tankers. And that also by, through the Delta Force, helicopter-borne operation. And the way how, you see how Russia was humiliated, how China was humiliated. ચાઇનાનું $100 billion ઇન્વેસ્ટમેન્ટ વેનેઝુએલામાં કંઈ કરી ના શક્યા. ચાઇનાની આટલી બધી એની long term strategic investment, nothing China could do. રશિયાને openly humiliate કરે છે by boarding the tankers in international waters. Russia could not do anything except Putin as the world's largest nuclear power na leader tarike, he was left by with issuing one particular statement. And international law and world order, and the rule of law must prevail. But rule of law must prevail in which world? Everybody is playing, not by the law. So, to expect such kind of a thing in today's geopolitics is absolutely uncalled for. So, what did he achieve in today's world? One is humiliation of Russia and China. Secondly, de-dollarization has gone for a 6. Thirdly, he has achieved total control on Venezuelan oil and therefore the oil situation in the entire world. And fourth, he has given a direct, put everybody on a notice, these small inconsequential countries, that should you go to BRICS, or should you try to become friendly with China, or should you try to think about de-dollarization, you are next on the line. I will have you for the breakfast.
તો સર એનો અર્થ એવો થયો કે હવે યુએસ ની દાદાગીરી બધાએ સહન કરવી પડશે?
ઓફકોર્સ કરવી પડશે, there is no doubt. કારણ કે તમે you cannot defeat USA, or you cannot budge USA militarily. It is out of question. US military has, તમે આ સમજો ડોક્ટર સાહેબ, કે US military is the only country in the world which has got the capacity to open up multi-front operation in the various parts of the oceans of the world. No other country, including Russia and China, have that kind of capacity. They may be the largest nuclear power and other powers and all that. But in absolute terms, underline this word, in the absolute terms, in maritime domain or otherwise, whether it's cyber, whether it's technology, whether it is capability, whether it's nuclear capability, whether it's, carrier battle group operation, trade-off, or total number of, the capable platforms, I am saying that. China has definitely got more, maritime platforms, but their capacity and capability-wise, or, technologically, they are much behind, US. Now, geopolitically, you cannot offset.
ઈરાનનું શું થશે? ઈરાન યુએસ ને ચેલેન્જ કરે છે, એમાં શું થશે?
See, now let's come to the Middle East. The problem in the Middle East is that somehow Israel has been able to hypnotize America. And, the way Mr. Netanyahu wants to do something, in the Middle East and West Asia, and the way, he wants to keep the entire region burning, America is playing the ball. And it is for a long time. Now, do you think, હું તમને એક સિમ્પલ સવાલ પૂછું છું to anybody, ને આપણા viewers ને સમજવું જોઈએ, that a small country like Israel, does it have a capacity to, pull along this kind of a war for such a long time without the total all-encompassing and, the extended support from US or a power like US? No, you cannot. And, અને માટે, the shiploads of ammunition, when Israel attacked, Iran, તમને ખ્યાલ હશે, અને those who are aware about the geopolitical situation would also know, 150 US aircraft, they lined up on the either side between Israel and Iran, and they created a safe corridor. jammers were put, E-2C, Hawkeye, and AWACS were put into action, and the Israeli aircraft were given a safe passage to go and bombard. They suppressed the entire air defense of Iran. And that is how, the Israel went through in the air attack. And Israel is moving around and jumping around like a frog in a well, thinking as if Israel is a great country. People, those who do not know the geopolitics, they do not know Netanyahu's game. From the day one, Dr. Saab, Netanyahu was interested that somehow or the other, with his shrewdness and cunningness, he wanted to pull US into the direct fight, which US did not do it. There is no doubt in that. પણ એ એવી સિચ્યુએશન ક્રિએટ કરવા માંગતા હતા કે somehow willy-nilly US gets pulled into active war with Iran and the Middle East, which he was pursuing. Now everybody knows that Netanyahu, when he addressed the nation, he said what was the major war aims. Dharek leader, when he takes the nation to war, then he says that my aims and objective of taking the nation to war are as follows. And what did he say? Please recall that I want to finish off Hamas. Hamas will cease to exist. Hezbollah will finish to exist. And Iran and the enemies of Israel will no more be capable. તમે આજે કહો, આજે 1.5 વર્ષ થયું. Has he achieved any of his war objective? Hamas is calling shots. Gaza is, absolutely, come to the ruins, but Hamas is still alive and active. Ideology is still kicking. And he's not been able to achieve that. Hezbollah, he could not do it. But now Lebanese army, with the active US support, is neutralizing, the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran is still calling shots. And without America, if there is a direct war between Iran and Israel, Israel will have a tough time. Last war, half of the Israel was attacked. Israel's defense ministry got attacked by the the long-range missiles of Iran, despite the US active and direct support to Israel. So imagine now Iran no શું થશે જે તમે મને પૂછ્યું છે એની અંદર one has to understand the fact that if the US the naval might gets pressed into service with at this moment of time the two strongest carrier battle groups, they have been diverted of Venezuela. Therefore the US Navy or the Pentagon, they have to position, these carrier battle groups in the Straits of Hormuz. તમે મને સાંભળી શકો છો?
Yes, sir.
So he has to position them in the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz, or in the Gulf of Oman, or even in the Arabian Sea. Without that kind of support, first of all, the initial strike, devastating strike, you can do it with the Air Force, but more so you can do it from the submarine launch, the long range or the land attack, the cruise missiles, and including even it could be, the medium range, the continental ballistic missile. And that has got an advantage. That tamara aircrafts will not get shot down. Tamne, minimal damage thai. And outstanding, from seaward side, the US destroyers, heavy destroyers, and submarines, they can carry out a devastating strike. So that is possible. And the Iran will be, hammered so much that his initial strike capability, it gets, dissipated. Now, after that is, Iran's military potential. It is much, much more than what most of the people think about it. Iran is not Venezuela. Ultimately, you have to put boots on the ground in Iran. Will Mr. Trump and America be able to do that? તમે જો ખરેખર જુઓ તો last 48 hours માં ઇરાનના Mr. Trumpના ટ્યુન totally બદલાઈ ગયા છે. Because Middle East countries, they've said that, look, we are not going to go with you so far. કે જેની અંદર Iran will be directly attacking us also. The possibility exists. And therefore, American bases apart, we will also come under fire. Similarly, NATO countries have very clearly told that we are not with you in this Iran operation. China has given an open threat. Russia has also said very tough words. So Iran, now at this point of time, Trump is dilemma. But what Trump is Trump is. and therefore, it is very difficult to predict the Trumponomics. And we
Yes.
have to wait and watch for next probably 48 hours that how far he will walk the talk. Because
Right.
જ્યારે લાસ્ટ ટાઈમ જ્યારે B-52 બોમ્બર્સ થી એને ન્યુક્લિયર ઇન્સ્ટોલેશન પર સ્ટ્રાઇક કરી ત્યારે તમે જો
જી.
જે વર્લ્ડ રિપોર્ટ્સ આવી રહ્યા છે એ જો તમે એનાલાઇઝ
જી.
કરો તો there is very dangerous the information that was floating around at that time. It said that 19 truckloads of fissile material was systematically moved out of those missile the nuclear sites, and the entire attack took place. It actually those the glide bombs were never used. It was only to just make Israel happy. They carried out some kind of a strike, but that earth penetrating glide bombs were never dropped. Because if by God, if the fissile material and some kind of the very very primitive nuclear device was underneath in the mount, hidden in the mountain, those storage places, half of the Iran would have got blown off.
આપણે
So
હિરોશીમા
Iran
અને
was given an
નાગાસાકી જેવું
option.
થાય. હિરોશીમા
Sorry?
નાગાસાકી જેવું પાછું થાય. હિરોશીમા કે નાગાસાકી જેવું પાછું.
એનાથી વધારે.
Yes.
Because that
Yes.
the potential strike of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki was much much lower, and nobody had an
Right.
idea as to what is lying there underneath those mountains. And Iran
I
was
agree.
not telling anybody. Oh, except
True.
maybe and the Russians, they also told Mr. Trump very clearly that in Bushehr we have our technicians supporting the Iranian nuclear program. So do not attack Bushehr. If you do that,
Right.
and even if one Russian technician is, probably comes under fire, we will have to, react in a
Right.
positive manner.
Right.
And Bushehr was not attacked.
Not
That is
attacked.
also
Yes.
the reality of life.
પણ સર છેલ્લે મને એક બીજો પ્રશ્ન થાય છે. એનો અર્થ એ થયો કે આપણે 48 અવર્સ સુધી રાહ જોવાની રહી, કારણ કે અત્યારે છે ને ટ્રમ્પ પણ છે ને ડાયલેમામાં છે, ઈરાન પાસે પણ પોટેન્શિયલ છે અને વિશ્વયુદ્ધ તરફ આગળ વધી રહ્યા હોઈએ એવી દિશામાં આપણે ધારો કે જઈ રહ્યા હોય એવા સંજોગો નિર્માણ થાય અને એટમિક જો યુદ્ધ થાય તો મને લાગે છે કે ખાના ખરાબી થઈ જશે.
But Dr. Saib, no, કોઈ તમે જે વાત કરી છે ને એટમિક યુદ્ધની, in my considered opinion, અને I do not, I'm not an astrologer, એટલે હું કહીને પણ હું as a defense analyst I would tell you કે વર્લ્ડની મહાસત્તાઓ, they are so responsible that they will never ever allow that situation, that moment to arrive.
To come.
The nuclear deterrence is such that it can never go out of control, or it should never be allowed to go out of control. That is the fundamental need. Two nuclear powers can never be responsible nuclear powers if that situation is allowed to come, start knocking at your door. And therefore તમે જુઓ અત્યારે, whether it is Venezuela, whether it is Iran, or whether China America relations, or China Russia relations, or America Russia relations, તમે 1945 થી નાટોના એક્ઝિસ્ટન્સ, કોલ્ડ વોર, ગમે ત્યારે જુઓ, ઇતિહાસ તમારી સામે છે. Russian and American soldiers, leave alone even a bomb and missile and F-16, they have not fired even one bullet at each other. They've never allowed that situation to come into play, whereby Russians have to fire at Americans or Americans have to fire at Russians. Syriaની અંદર તમે જ્યારે Mr. ત્યાંના આઝાદ, when he was ruling Syria, that time both Americans and Russians, they were operating almost in the same vicinity. But look at the kind of agreements that were achieved between both of them and both air forces and both command and control centers. The rules of engagement were so clear that before a Russian fighter jet took off, Americans were informed, and before US fighter was airborne, the Russians were informed. Never ever once there was a crossfire or there was a fratricide. Mate, the maturity, in nuclear thing, theoretically, to tamne ખ્યાલ હશે, theoretically, both these countries, they have a capability, nuclear capability wise, that they can wipe out the entire earth 2.5 to 2.7 times. But is that
Right.
possible? All these talk about MIRV, multiple independent re-entry vehicle, multiple target. New York and Washington will be wiped out, and Leningrad and Moscow will be wiped out. This is and second strike capability, ICBM is all part of a deterrence, but never to
Right.
be brought into play if it's a mature nuclear power. And both these
Yes.
powers over a period of time, and now China included, they have learned the game that how deterrence must prevail. And therefore, they
Yes.
both will talk to each other. Both will have some kind of a working relationship between two of them, and they will never ever allow their mutual interest to be curbed. And that is why a power like India has to learn a lot. That never depend on these three poles, but learn to survive between three poles, because these three poles can play very
Right.
very very nasty game against India. Therefore, never go on the face value of
True.
these three poles, Russia, America, and China. Never get so close to them,
Right.
never
Right.
take so much of dependence
Yes.
on them, but have your own foreign policy that is workable.
Sir, yeah. નહીં, I fully agree with you. મને લાગે છે કે આજે આપણે જે વાત કરી, આપે ખૂબ વ્યાપક ભૂમિકા ઉપર જે વાત કરી, એને કારણે દર્શકોને પણ બહુ સ્પષ્ટ થયું કે અણુયુદ્ધ તો નહીં જ થાય. આપ અમારી સાથે જોડાયા એ બદલ આપનો ખૂબ ખૂબ આભાર. અને ફરીને પાછા આપણે જોડાઈશું. આપને જ્યારે અનુકૂળતા હશે ત્યારે. અમે ગૌરવ અનુભવીએ છીએ કોમોડોર ઉત્પલ વોરાને સંદર્ભમાં ગુજરાતી હોવાને કારણે જ નહીં, પણ ભારતીય હોવાને કારણે પણ આપના એનાલિસિસથી અમને લોકોને ખૂબ આનંદ આવે છે અને જાણવા મળે છે. ફરી મળીશું નવા એપિસોડમાં નવા વિષય સાથે. આપનો ખૂબ ખૂબ આભાર સર. થેન્ક યુ.
Thank you so
much.
much. Once again, honor, Dr.
Right.
Saib. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.